All right, Nick, let's talk about the Cincinnati Bengals. We have been going through the offseason free agency moves, this big first wave of free agency moves. And there's some interesting statistics that are pointing out to some really smart moves, some smart upgrades that the Cincinnati Bengals have made. And I think that the fans are going to love this.
Yeah, Miles, I was thinking that was a very interesting report that you dug up. But before we get into that, Bengals fans, Who Dey Nation, we want to hear from you as always in the comments section below. Look, obviously, the Bengals have been one of the more active teams in the free agency and trade market. A lot of potential moves for the Bengals, a lot of moves they did make, a lot of moves that they didn't make. But regardless of what they've done, we want to hear from you guys in the comments section below. Give us your grade for the Bengals offseason at this point. A plus to D minus, whatever you think it is, because you're the fans. You know more than like those talking heads on ESPN. They give out their grades. They don't know what the heck they're talking about. We know you guys, our viewers, do. So make sure you give us your grades for the Bengals offseason so far in the comment section below. All right, Miles, what you got? What's going on out of Cincinnati?
Yeah, Nick, the Bengals have been making a lot of big free agency moves, bolstering a lot of former weaknesses on their roster. If you would ask any Bengals fans, I'd say in the past 2 years, what their biggest weakness was, why they couldn't get the Super Bowl victory, why they couldn't make it to the Super Bowl that second time, they'd probably say our offensive line was a weakness. Our offensive line was a sticking point. If we had a better offensive line, it would have made a big difference. And the Bengals heard that. They went out. They spent some money on the position in free agency. Obviously, we talked earlier a few weeks or so ago about the Orlando Brown move. That was a great move. The Cody Ford signing, that was a great one. Another depth signing with Max Sharping, re-signed to a 1-year deal. So they've really gone in on the offensive line position. And I have an interesting graph here, Nick, to show you. It has paid off. And this is a pass protection expectation. So this is going off of the play of some players last year, and PFF has some model that models in decay of performance of some metrics. It goes way over my head. There's a lot of math involved here, but I can look at colors and I can look at numbers and I can tell you the Cincinnati Bengals have a lot of blue on that offensive line, and blue is good. And they are now ranked 11th in the NFL for pass protection expectation, Nick. This is huge. And even potentially with the trade of Jonah Williams, I believe this has that factored in because I think the Bengals are expecting to put Cody Ford at the right tackle position. That's a position he's played in the past. I know even though he was signed, and he was a guard when he was signed. So I really like what the Bengals have done. I think they've really bolstered this offensive line position, and I think they've made something that is a weakness of theirs into a strength, but I don't think that's the only thing they've done here, Nick. What do you think about this?
Mine's obviously seeing the Bengals as high as number 11 for a franchise that has struggled in an offensive line for the past couple of years. It's obviously a very welcome sign for Cincinnati fans. Of course, they spent a lot of money last offseason. They spent some draft capital as well. They got a little bit better, but really didn't push them over the hump. Lyle Collins was not the guy that I hoped he would be. Going out and getting Orlando Brown was just the perfect move to make. It was very, and sorry to bring this up for Bengals fans, very Rams getting Matthew Stafford. The Bengals are one of those few teams that are one player away, it seems, a quality protection offensive tackle to pair with Williams or without Williams, just one guy to be a quality pass protector for Joe Burrow away from, really competing to win a championship this time. And they went out and got it. So credit to them. But one other thing that really jumped at me looking at this graph, myself, look at the Kansas City Chiefs, the Bengals' number one rival. This is a team that had one of the better pass protection offensive lines last year. Of course, very famously, they held the great Eagles pass rush to 0 sacks in the Super Bowl. Sans Orlando Brown and sans Wiley, and they've had a lot of guys leave. The Chiefs are now all the way down at number 25 in terms of pass protection expectations. So that's exactly why the move for getting Orlando Brown was even more critical than just upgrading their own offensive line. It weakened a rival, their bitter rival. And so you have the Bengals at this point, because they're the Bengals, I think, and I think you'd agree with this too, Mice. They're no longer competing with the Ravens and the Steelers, right, to win a division, right? Because they've won the division, they've been in the playoffs, make deep playoff runs. They're truly in Super Bowl mode, right? They're up there with the Bills and the Chiefs in the AFC with competing for Super Bowl or bust. It's not winning 9 games or 10 games. It's making it to the big game and this time winning it. And getting Orlando Brown not only has upgraded their offensive line to the point they're now above average to borderline top 10, they've also helped weaken their biggest rival down to mediocre offensive line. And I think that will be huge when you look forward to future playoff matchups. When you get those Bengals pass rushers now against a weaker Chiefs offensive line, suddenly it's not as big a matchup issue for the Chiefs. They get more pressure on Mahomes, force more turnovers, get more stops. Likewise, Burrow gets better protection. He doesn't get stopped as much, scores more points. 23-20 in Kansas City this past offseason. Something looks a lot more like 31-17 in the Bengals' favor next season. That's what it looks like to me looking at this graph, Miles.